course, I always loved what the Brits were doing with film. And then a film comes along like The Red Shoes, and you're just overwhelmed by it. And that included the photography, which matched the story so beautifully. And Jack Cardiff, as a name I knew well.
Jack Cardiff's stunning work with the Technicolor camera and color system, his painting with light, has become legendary.
Black Narcissus, which was a spectacularly photographed film. When I was a struggling cinematographer, it made a deep impression on me. He was somebody whose work had that rich kind of almost operatic sense.
I was an actor from the war, and I played in 1 or 2 films. I played the lead in a couple of films. And that was how I became automatically in films, so that when I had to leave school early, when my father was ill, I went into the film studios at Elstree, and that's when I started as a gopher. I noticed that the boys on the camera seemed to be going abroad a lot, and I thought, what a wonderful thing to be in the camera department.
Jack moved up to camera operator, and it was while shooting some second unit pickup shots that he was noticed by director Michael Powell.
One particular shot I had to do on a separate stage, and it was complicated to light because every time you put a light on it made multiple shadows. As I had time, I was doing a pretty good job on it, and I heard a voice say, "Very interesting." And I looked round, and there was the great Michael Powell. And he was staring at it like this with his arms folded, as he used to have them. And he said, "Would you like to photograph my next picture?" "Oh, yes, Mr. Powell, I'd love that very much. Yes, I would like that, you know." He said, "Well, we start in 3 months." And he went.
It was the beginning of a remarkable career for Jack. These are just some of the highlights. John Huston chose Jack to for his classic, The African Queen, with Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart came up to me and he said, "Jack Cardiff, you see this face?" He said, "I've had this face a long time now," and he said, "it's full of creases and marks and bags under the eye," and he said, "I'm very proud of these marks." He says, "I don't want you to put soft lighting and make it look like a goddamn fag." That's what he said to me.
Jack Cardiff, I mean, obviously, one grew up with as a young director, but Cardiff's work was, I suppose, his photography of people was his close-up work, his portraiture, as it were, movie version of it. His ability to light faces with subtlety was what I remember most about his work.
Marilyn Monroe was wonderful to light because she had practically a perfect face. She had a slightly tipped-up nose. Her face reminded me very much of Renoir. She had that kind of, her lips were like Renoir, and she had a sort of Renoir look about her. But then again, it was difficult not to light her very well because she looked so beautiful.
What surprised me, given his painterly qualities of lighting and the fact that he's obviously, and it is well known that he was inspired by the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists and Rembrandt. What surprised me is that he could apply Rembrandt to a very gritty war film.
Black Narcissus, which was a wonderful achievement in as much as, knowing dear old as I did, I'm sure Mickey woke up one day and said, "I know what I'd like to do. I'd like to do a complete location picture in the studio." And so Jack was confined to do a location picture of Black Narcissus in a studio, and it was a wonderful job.
Michael Powell was very wise, because he said, we're not going to India, we're doing it all in the studios. And at first we thought, oh my goodness, you know, this is going to be it can't be so good as a place. Michael Powell broke all the rules anyway, and that was what I admired about him. It was supposed to be a story of nuns who tried to found a convent and hospital in the Himalayas, but because the Himalayas were so beautiful, the very pagan beauty of the place defeats them. Well, what more perfect vehicle for a cameraman could that be, you know, with beauty and the fact that being high in the Himalaya mountains, there was this wonderful breeze that kept coming in and rustling the clothes and rustling everything, so that constant movement was beautiful to look at.
Jack Cardiff, I always think of being as being a very romantic cinematographer. He photographed women beautifully.
Deborah Kerr had what I call an absolute, imperishable, perfect face. I mean, if she went to a party and stayed up all night and drank a couple of bottles of whiskey or whatever, and the next morning would come on the set looking absolutely bright and beautiful. Well, painting with light is, of course, a loose kind of cliche, but the fact is that the art of the cameraman, I believe, should be to emphasize the drama of the story, if you like, by studying the actual painters like Vermeer and Caravaggio. They were a perfect lesson in how to light people. Particularly the old classical painters used to use one key light and light people. And this was fascinating to me, to see how simplicity was the keynote. We had a scenic artist who painted on glass. I mean, that, looking down from the bell position, it looked like it went on forever. It looked like 1,000 or so feet down. But in fact, from the top of the bell tower to the ground was something like 8 feet. And considering that we were working in the studio grounds, almost wherever you looked, you never had a vision, you never had mountains or never had any effect other than other studio buildings in the background. We were surrounded by studios. So if we wanted to show any of the exterior, we'd have to paint it. The main powerful base were the costumes of the nuns, which was sort of oatmeal white. The lighting was always meant to be bright sunlight that came in, because it was supposed to be very high up in very clear air, and that was a great advantage for me, to make clear light and sharp and everything else.
Although Jack had trained and worked for Technicolor and was an expert with their camera and system, they continually tried to impose strict rules on his lighting and shooting of scenes.
I have a 2 fog filter, which was very slight really, but it gave a sort of soft effect. It was sort of dawn, slightly foggy look about it. The next morning, Technicolor sent a report saying that everything we'd shot that day was NG, and they put the stuff on the screen. And the moment I saw it, I knew it was good, I knew it was right. And Michael Powell said, "Jack, that's wonderful, it's exactly what I wanted." And he turned to Technicolor and he said, "You know, you've got to really learn something about art here." He said, "This is really great." And he gave him a roasting.
In 1947, Jack won an Oscar for his work on Black Narcissus.
I remember how difficult it was to get candle effects with arcs. And I remember how we had to open the studio doors to let the fog of the blue haze from the arc lamps out every so often. In those days, of course, Technicolor needed much more light, about 5 times higher than it is today. So a lot of light was needed, and that was tough to light. We did the scene of Catherine Byron with an accented makeup, because she has put lipstick on, which was a big shock. It's surprising how a lot of people talk about that film and they say what a shock it was to see the nun putting on red lipstick. One of the few locations was a place called Horsham. And we were shooting there. There was a lake there, and we had fire engines ready to shoot up water in the air, so it came down with a crash on the scene in the lake, and that was supposed to be the breaking of the rains. The rains were there. And we were setting up the camera, and I noticed around me they had these large cucumber, is it leaves, eucalyptus leaves? Anyway, big leaves about this big. And I said to Michael, wouldn't it be a good idea, instead of starting with just the rains plonking down like that, if we started in a more subtle way, that you had a rain fall on the rhubarb leaves? He said, that's a good idea, we'll do that. So here am I on a 6-foot ladder with a cup of water, and the camera starts rolling on a close-up of the leaf, and you see a drop of water, plop, 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 and the camera pans up, and then, of course, the fire engines let the chutes go, and the rain comes down. Black Narcissus was the one film that was perfect for a cameraman.